Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well and staying safe. Tonight's talk will be presented by Developer Steve, a Senior Developer Advocate from Snyk. Before I hand over, I'd just like to run through some announcements and general housekeeping. Next month, on Tuesday the 17th of August, Vandana Verma will be presenting a great talk on continuous security. The details for the talk are available on all of our social media platforms, so make sure you don't miss out on it. If you're watching on YouTube and you have any questions or comments, please feel free to write them down in the comment section of the video, and we'll read them out after the presentation. If you're joining us on Discord, we ask that you keep your microphone on mute during the presentation. After, feel free to unmute yourself so we can have a bit more of a chat and a general discussion. If you're currently not watching on Discord but want to, feel free to come in now. We're in the Chapter AU SID Voice channel, and the link to join the Discord server is in the description of the video. Alrighty, that's all I've got, so I'll hand over to Developer Steve for Stranger Danger, helping developers discover vulns before they find you.
Amazing, thank you. Thanks, Jack, and hello to everyone. Just going to share my screen really quick. Whoops, let's go back to that and go live. Hopefully you can all see my screen okay. And again, thank you all very much for joining the session. I'm really excited to, just to geek out, connect. Like Jack was saying, please join the Discord. One of the things I love particularly is just everyone connecting. And at the end of OWASP Sydney, I always love just geeking out, hearing the chatter and just talking and connecting. So, which is always great. So come and join us if you haven't already. Please put comments into the chat. If you've got any questions, face palms, emojis, like whatever it's going to be. Spoilers there because I do have a facepalm moment coming, but we'll get into that in one moment. Just before I get underway, I'd like to do a special heartfelt respect and acknowledgement to the Wagundja people, who are the traditional owners on the lands here in Narromine, where I'm presenting today. And for those that don't know where Narromine is, it's in country New South Wales, about 7 hours from Sydney, give or take, 4 hours from Canberra. Out with the cold and the mice. So anyway, and I hope you're all safe and well wherever you're watching from, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay. Hello from the past, if you're watching the replay. I hope you're all safe and well. And again, join the Discord because communities like this, I always love because, everyone just openly shares what they know. Everyone's learning new things. And as a developer, as a security person, as a DevOps, I always love that because, that's what the entire industry is built on. Anyway, I'm going to open with a bit of a disclaimer, and I kind of gave it a little bit of away at the start because my disclaimer is I have a whole bunch of tech jokes. So I always love opening with these because, it was always important in the time before that we keep laughing and smiling in times like this, and now is no exception. So now this joke is open source, so please take it away with you and pass along because, again, we all need to keep laughing and smiling. But why did the vulnerability get tired? Might be like, why would a vulnerability get tired? It's because it ransomware. Get it? Get it? Yeah, I can feel the face palms already. They're great. I can probably see a whole bunch in YouTube right now or on Discord of people going, oh. I do have a whole bunch more. So anyway, I don't have too many planned for the rest of this prozo, but again, join us afterwards and I'll throw a few more out. But for those that I haven't met yet, hello, I am Developer Steve. I am one of the senior developer advocates at Snyk. I've been a developer advocate, developer evangelist for a number of years now for companies like PayPal, Braintree, for Xero, for Telstra, for IBM. And one of the things I love the most about being an advocate is the whole geeking out thing, connecting and whatnot. So I've done a lot of talks throughout a whole bunch of places over the years. And it got to the point where people started calling me Developer Steve at events. So I thought, when I got married a few years ago, and that's my wedding photo on the top right, I thought, I wonder if I can make my middle name Developer Steve when I took my married name, which is Kuchin. So we combined our last names, so Cooper plus Houchin became Kuchin. So it turns out you can. Developer Steve is actually my middle name. So there you go. But yeah, I've basically been coding since the age of 8. So I thought, you know what, developer in my middle name kind of makes sense, or part of my middle name. It's actually one word too. Kind of makes sense because I have literally been coding since, and for those that will remember it, QBasic, back in the days of, old computing. Totally giving away my age here. But I started coding QBasic on an Atari 800 XL. Drop in the chat if you ever use one of those with the 5.5-inch disc. But one of the things, sort of going through my developer origin story, one of the things I kind of just discovered with more modern languages is just how much you miss that whole world of libraries and dependencies, and just makes things so much easier for coding. Anyway, I'm getting my head off. There's some slides. We're going to get into that bit. But as you may have gathered, I am a developer, and I'm a developer that totally understands and gets the whole need for developers to shift left to embrace the shift left to adopt and embrace the security mindset. And it's something like I've often pondered over the years as well, just even when I spent some time as a CTO, needing to just wondering what was in the open source things that we were using or my development team was using with deployments. And even when I was working through digital agency days, just understanding the stuff I was deploying for clients at scale sometimes, why it was continually being compromised and why I was continually cleaning up websites. Not going to mention any platform names here, but I'm sure you can imagine. So this session today is sort of covering the way that we're now helping developers understand that whole embracing of the shift left mindset and having a more security focus at the code front. Ultimately, as a developer, it's something we all need to be more mindful of, particularly when utilizing open source libraries, open source dependencies, because fundamentally, like that is those are the things which are opening up vulnerabilities or attack vectors inside stacks and applications, which as security professionals, like you do amazing work on the sometimes on the back end of that, trying to plug and fix all that sort of stuff. So this is kind of an Ask Me Anything session as much as it is here's how we're helping devs, because as a developer and having worked in a multitude of companies as one, having like even built a team that was deploying these applications, again, if you've got any questions, either just put it inside one of the chats, but also join us afterwards, and I literally Ask Me Anything from the development code front point of view. So like I said, I've been developing applications for a number of years now. And from a developer's point of view, like being able to leverage like open source libraries, open source dependencies inside code is amazing because it speeds up development. Like I was saying with the days of QBasic, like we didn't have libraries to be able to leverage, or open source ecosystems as a whole to be able to pull in and reuse functionality, reuse code and libraries that basically evolved as the frameworks did. But a lot of it was built from scratch. Whereas now, like you're able to do like an npm install, a composer install, whichever ecosystem it is, we're able to pull in these libraries and reuse them to build out some applications really, really quickly as part of an SDLC. One of the things I love the most as a developer is, and most devs are like this too, is you build these applications with end users in mind. So if you think about it, like building out that one application with some easy to use authentication or nice, easy to use functionality, it enables things in their everyday life, which as a dev, like that's what I'm doing it for. Everything from entertainment to social media to just connecting to each other, or in whole new ways, or being able to order food or whatever it is. Like we're building out applications that literally help them save time and, well, just changes their day to day. And this is where something we've been bringing more awareness to in development teams is this is also the other aspect of the security side of things, because as developers, we also owe it to our users we're building for to be able to help protect the users that they're building for. So if you think about all the data that then gets stored as subsequent to that functionality inside that application, I need to also look after and protect the users' information and their day-to-day just as much as I have to build out their amazing functionality. It is equally as important. So thinking back to that application that we're building out and like leveraging all those open source libraries, communities, and ecosystems, it's exponentially growing year on year. And I mean, that's no surprise when you think like a lot of the frameworks and languages, all the communities that are doing the amazing work to build out these libraries, dependencies, and well, functionality throughout ecosystems, throughout npm, pp, composer. That a lot of those communities build out functionality into libraries that sometimes splits off into subsequent libraries along with it. So quite often what you'll see in some of the open source communities is like functionality that'll start off in one little component, or as part of one component will sometimes separate off into a dependency that then gets utilized throughout multiple packages throughout the ecosystem, which is really, really great. As somebody that really loves open source and just the stuff that it can bring to industries, like I love the fact that it's just exponentially growing. And as you all know, as security professionals, like you know that with this comes also the vulnerabilities that surface alongside it. Not only from like direct dependencies, but also indirect dependencies as well. So, and as you'll know, just from new and emerging attack vectors, there's always new methods to be able to get through different package types or different platforms as this ecosystem builds out. And totally preaching to the choir here, I know, but when we start to get into open source supply chain security in particular, just seeing some of the timelines play out of like the initial vulnerability being identified in a particular package, in a particular ecosystem, maybe running on particular infrastructure, we see the time delays it takes for these vulnerabilities to be identified, but then also for that to be remediated, for fixes to get deployed, for release candidates to get tested out in the field. And we've seen this time and time again, like the likes of Electron Native Notify and the NPM ecosystem. I'm sure you've all got your stories. Again, join us afterwards. I love hearing these stories. But something I'm really passionate about too is working closely with a lot of these open source communities to not only help identify the initial threat, but also helping them mitigate those fixes, getting out release candidates, getting pull requests in, like being able to enable them to take action really, really quickly. I'm just going to pivot there because there was something in the news the other week which I found super, super interesting. Now, for those that don't know, I mean, other than being a massive tech geek, but also I love IoT stuff. So there was actually a really interesting article that came out last week where the federal government in Australia is actually looking to make IoT security standards mandatory. And if you think about that, like the firmware that runs on these tiny little devices, which literally switch lights on and off, like they are really simple devices. I love IoT security, especially. There's some talks coming with that and some demos. Just wait, it's coming. But yeah, I find this fascinating because these tiny little devices, which literally can interact with our everyday lives, as we all know, and I'm sure many of you have already looked at some of the security nuances, let's say, with a lot of the different device types. I know I have, especially when you start getting into smart homes, like being able to mandate at the firmware level some security around, you think the libraries that run on those little tiny devices, but also the firmware that runs on them as well, and even things like over-the-air updates. As we all know, these things are like predominantly rather vulnerable just because they are very simple devices and they need to be for the power side of things. This is a whole other talk. I just wanted to mention it and geek out. Anyway, again, join us at the end because I have some stories. But anyway, there are some demos coming. Just back on the open source side of things, something I always, and I was literally just talking about it with the last slide a little bit, but something I'm always a big advocate of, particularly, is contributing back where you can to open source communities. So it doesn't necessarily have to be at the code level, but even being able to raise a pull request on a repo, or raising a security bug when you find a vulnerability or you know the vulnerability, helps the ecosystem as a whole just be able to mitigate that and get some fixes in place as soon as they can. There's actually a Ruby blog I'm about to push out at the moment, a blog talking about Ruby security, where there's been certain vulnerabilities raised into some open source packages that were raised in 2016, and they're still there. So, and these communities do amazing work, but they're like mostly volunteer led. So, anyway, I know you all do anyway because you're all amazing. But something I always highlight with developers is contribute back where you can, especially if you're using that particular open source project. I know you do because you're all cool. Anyway, one of the ways we're doing that at Sneak is with this tool called Sneak Advisor that helps monitor the contributor, a number of attributes with a particular open source community, library, or package. So it actually monitors number of active users, pull requests, vulnerabilities across a particular package. And for developers, this is a way for them to be able to determine the due diligence on a particular library that they're looking to use inside their stack, or a component of their stack if they're looking at the DevOps, SecOps side of things as well. We also, I just wanted to mention too, we also run the vulnerability disclosure program for Node.js now too. And again, this is about helping the ecosystem identify vulnerabilities as quickly as we can, but then also validating those, and then also helping contribute back to those groups where we can as well, and just raising awareness for the need to why this needs to be patched as quickly as possible. If you are somebody that one of the security researchers that is looking to publish something through the vulnerability disclosure program and you need help, please reach out. We'd love to help you. And also, thank you for the work you're doing in advance. The one thing which I always find interesting is, particularly with the NPM ecosystem, is something we see is from the developer side of things, is it's not necessary, it's predominantly not even direct dependencies. And I got some demos I'm going to walk through looking at this today and just how easy it is for these to get in. But a lot of the vulnerabilities, up to 80%, in fact, we find come in through indirect libraries. So as it does. And again, this is about building the awareness for the unawareness. But as a developer, I'm just going to npm install that particular library, which then pulls in 5-6 other indirect dependencies as part of the install. And that's where the vulnerabilities start to surface. It sometimes can actually be a combination, or as you know, as security professionals, but it sometimes can be a combination of a particular package and then also a particular set of infrastructure, which will start to cause some vulnerabilities to surface. We not only see this, interestingly though, and I keep pretty close eye on some of the new CVEs, or some of the daily CVEs coming out. I've actually seen this in some data analytical platforms too lately. So the likes of TensorFlow is starting to get some buns in it too now. Got some demos I want to do with that, but yeah, not tonight. So from a development point of view, what we recommend is that developers basically continue not only initially scan at the code front, which is critically important, and the demos we're looking at tonight are going to be able to, is how we help them understand. Because from a developer point of view, if I can understand the base code, then and how that vulnerability is able to get around it and affect it, then I can understand how to mitigate that, how to fix it at the code front, at the code level. Sometimes that's a combination of upgrading to a different package type because the community's been able to move on it fairly quickly and get a release fix in place. But sometimes it also pays to be ongoingly scanning that. But you all know that because, hopefully you're recommending to do that anyway because, that's how you identify not only the initial vulnerabilities that appear in code sets, but you ongoingly are able to pick up new ones as they're identified too. Particularly if your development stacks that you're supporting have that delay in getting grades out, or they need to be regression tested or whatnot beforehand. So totally, the big thing here is helping developers understand how these vulnerabilities appear at the code level, at the base level, at the code front, if you will. And then not only that initial scan, but also ongoingly scanning them with whatever tools you're using. Essentially not letting them get the foot in the door. One of the ways that I always like to highlight here, and I have totally been here before, so I can totally relate to this. One of the ways I like to talk about this too is not being the person that gets that big cloud hosting bill at the end of the month. And I have seen this. I have totally seen this. Actually, this is one of the reasons why I early in my developer origin story, I pivoted into DevOps partly so I could build my own sandboxes because that's always fun as a dev. But then the other reason was so I could have more visibility into what was running on my stack, so I didn't chew through shared hosting credits every month because that was the thing in agency days. Fundamentally, like being able to at the code front level also control infrastructure as a developer is amazingly cool. And as we all know, like as stacks have matured, as apps have matured, and in particular, infrastructure that you run all that on has matured over the years. Like apps are now more than your code in the cloud native world because it's so easy to build and deploy stuff now as a dev. Like I just take a tiny little config file and hey presto, I can deploy Docker. It's no surprise then that we've seen in the Docker ecosystem over 242 billion downloads of based Docker images to date. And if you think about like from the infrastructure side of things, like me building an app out as a developer is just the start of the journey when it comes, especially to user adoption. And containerizing those workloads going out into the world are really cool because like I can move them across clouds, I can move them to redundancy servers like really quickly, really easily, and bring that elasticity to like my stack. It's so great. Like no more setting up whole server rooms of stuff, and people still run on-prem or whatnot, but from the cloud centric point of view, it just means that I can make my app delivery, my app deployments more scalable, more movable. And it's no surprise then, and I'm sure you're across some of the vulnerabilities that have surfaced with this too, that we do see more vulnerabilities now appearing in base container images, particularly with Docker. And not only just once off, like we consistently see this year after year, like the top 10 Docker base images on Docker Hub are carrying the vulnerabilities in them that we were literally just talking about, which kind of makes sense because like those are built using open source libraries and dependencies as well. So it makes sense that they're carrying them with them as well. Which is why like continually scanning that stuff as well is just as critical as the code front level to make sure that nice clean code isn't going into a vulnerable container or vulnerable infrastructure. The way I like to think about this, dev joke coming, with great containerization comes great responsibility. There we go. Which is a great way to, I think, to think about it because like building out that Docker image that then gets used on multiple clouds or multiple infrastructure or a scalable application can be just as vulnerable inside your stack, letting in all sorts of nasty things, even if your code base is clean, even if there's no vulnerabilities in the actual libraries that you're building that application from. So totally need to be scanning those as well. As this is something we sort of stress pretty highly when talking to developers, DevOps, etc. Is just making sure you scan the infrastructure that stuff's getting deployed on to make sure it's all nice and clean. Last section I'm going to talk about just before we go to the fun demos, which are all going to work. Yes, Murphy's Law, they're all going to work. Is infrastructure as code, which I really love from a development point of view. Like I was saying before, like it's really easy and quick to deploy and to be able to get things configured literally from my command line. It's great. Literally build your own sandboxes in seconds and put your own apps on them. Something I've been playing around with a bit lately is AWS code pipelines, building in some nice CI/CD workflows, which you can build not only test gates in to make sure that if code works in my local environment, it's going to work everywhere else as well. So if it doesn't pass that test gate check, then it doesn't go past that particular checkpoint. And the same thing can be done in these workflows as well to build in security checks to make sure you're picking up anything that could be vulnerable, anything that may stop that deployment from happening, just so it can get some further investigation. As we all know, like the number one configuration with IAC is this. Well, sorry, let me redo that. The number one cloud vulnerability with IAC is misconfiguration. So setting permissions to the right levels, setting different accesses, setting different configurations inside the cloud itself. while it's easier to and quicker to be able to deploy things now, it also brings with it that whole error piece as well. So anyway, I'm ready for some demos. You're ready for some demos? I know I am. And then I have a few more slides and we're done. But anyway, if you haven't yet joined us in the Discord or you haven't yet put a comment in the chat, please do so. And let's go to this first app. So I normally start on the GitHub. So again, this is one of the ways that we help devs understand like what is a vulnerability, what are they looking for in particular at the code level, which is great because as a developer myself, like understanding it at this level means I can understand exactly not only what I'm looking for in future, but well, just to understand it at the code level. This one, first one in particular, see, we have this demo app, and this is one of my favorite things to highlight in this demo app is the number of vulnerabilities in here are totally intentional because this is for demo and training purposes only. Please don't run this in production. I know you all won't. I always highlight over devs though. It's like, please don't put this on infrastructure. This demo app is a basic to-do app in Node. So something you can run locally, you can run on Docker, you can run on test Heroku. But the purpose is literally so that devs can get hands-on and understand what they're looking for at the code level. So please feel free to try this at home, pass it to your developers, like let them have play, etc. There is a folder called exploits, which has a whole bunch of fun toys in there, so you can see what it's doing, you can pick through it, whatever else. The one we're going to be looking at today is from a library called Marks, which is it does cross-site scripting, which one of my favorite pen testing attack vectors that I've ever done. I actually did something similar to what we're about to do tonight. Remember those 25 words or less apps from back in Facebook days? I did so many of those. One of the things I always liked doing was just testing for things for like, I don't know, not sanitizing user input, which this one app someone built wasn't me because I always sanitize my input. I'm a good dev. Someone didn't sanitize input and you're able to enter like straight up HTML, which came added to everyone else's app as well. So there you go. You can imagine what fun could be done with that. Anyway, this is a basic to-do app, and the input is running through the marked library, which is available here. We're using 0.3.5, and anything below 0.3.6 is not good. And normally, this is how we show them like how it works. Where is it? There it is. The library has a sanitized true flag that can be set at the code level. I mean, you'd think that would always be on, right? Anyway, maybe I'll raise a PR. But yeah, there is a sanitized true flag so that as a user input stuff, like it's going to try and do some basic regex and some syntax matching to be able to determine whether the stuff being inputted is what we want it to be, because sometimes it's not, as you all know. So it is basic markdown. This is there we go, bold statement, and this could be a pun. Yes, it is. So I can do like that. I can make it bold, like just with some basic markdown stuff. Of course, one of the things we can do with markdown is enter links, which is probably going to give you a hint as to what we're about to do, because we're going to inject some JavaScript into that. I mean, there's nothing untoward with that one. That's just a straight up link. But as you know, with like the OWASP some of the OWASP attack vector methods and probably stuff you've tried at home and tried at work and tried everywhere, is you can URL and character types and use objects from particular languages, particularly JavaScript, to be able to inject into the user's browser and do all sorts of nasty things. So essentially setting up something like this using this from JavaScript to do a bit of an object to kick off an alert box, like so, and there's some URL characters wrapped around that. Because from the development side of things, all we're trying to do is get around that particular library and inject some nasty things into the user's browser, like that, which is exactly what the vulnerability for this particular library is. And from a developer point of view, they can not only see like at the command line what it's doing, but also understand from the code side of things by literally picking through the library to see literally what it's doing. And as you can imagine, if I click that now, then this alert is loading. That is another part. Aha. That's one way we use. We do have another Java Goof app that I also like doing as well, which very similar. It's a to-do app. Actually, before we do this one, I'm going to refresh my Heroku. This also has a whole bunch of vulnerabilities in there as well. So it has a few different ones you can try at home. The one we're going to be looking at for this demo is a file traversal exploit, which I've a path traversal exploit, namely zip slip. So this one's kind of interesting because, well, I've had this something similar happen to one of my servers before. Don't want to say WordPress, but WordPress, where like scripts were loaded onto a server, and next minute I'm getting handed a big bill for something that I didn't anticipate to run. There you go. It happens to the best of us, which is why we need to be avoiding it. So with this particular one, we have a, and again, this is all on GitHub. If you want to try this at home, feel free. I'm like literally just running this on free tier. The exploit folder actually has the zip slip zip. I'm getting better at saying that. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Which we're going to be using to kick this off. And this one in particular uses in Java, it's using the zip util library, which is listed there. And we're basically going to be overriding the native to ASCII function inside Java. So the way it works is this. Let's look at the file first. There we go there. So if we have a look inside the zip slip zip, you can see the file traversal as part of the zip, and also there is one other file which is called good.txt. Which one's not good? Don't let the name fool you. So what this will do is, leverage inside that particular library. It's going to, well, as you can imagine, navigate the actual file structure and override that particular function. So let me sign in and then, I think I typed it wrong. Hang on. In my demos, what can go wrong? Let's try that again. Hey, there we go. Yeah, and Chrome. No, I don't want to save it. Why would it ask me if it was, anyway. So it's a basic to-do app. I can create basic to-do list item, set a different priority as a user, which is pretty easy. I can upload my own files, which is what we're about to do now. Once I upload files. There we go. And it's probably, it's still in the right spot. Hooray. Did you have to navigate all my development environment? Very simply, I can upload the zip pretty easily. And then it creates a good.txt file, but as you can imagine, it has now done a file traversal and also replaced that particular function, which sets the title on any entries that I put into the database, which now does, gotcha. There was no pun there. But anyway, this is one of the ways, again, that we help developers understand at the code level, like what vulnerabilities look like, what they can do, and, well, as I'm sure many of you have probably dealt with, again, come share your stories. In the past, so especially with a file traversal vulnerability, like just what that's meant on the infrastructure side of things, like mining crypto, just doing DDoSs, the list is endless. I don't condone any of that, by the way. The last one I just wanted to show was this one. As a dev, like I've also had been delving back into platforms and things that I just used in the past. So, there was a whole bunch of them which were actually really surprising to me. Particularly, there's a couple platforms in the PHP world which I've been talking to some communities about, just touching some things. One in particular, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but in the NPM ecosystem or the Node ecosystem, there was a WordPress equivalent called Ghost, which kind of got quite a big emergence a few years ago. So this was a lot of people moving from WordPress to Ghost because of security issues, which a little bit. Anyway, I'm going to show you what I found in this one recently. Just a command line. I did this the other day, and I'd actually fixed some stuff inadvertently, so it should. There we go. So this is literally using the latest version straight from the GitHub, and there's some interesting things in there. So 24 Vulns found literally just with like a package manager scan, and 39 vulnerable paths. That's off the shelf. Anyway, yeah, I just found that super interesting. Again, like these communities do amazing work, but we need to be able to help them sort of mitigate this stuff a lot quicker and be able to patch and fix things. Anyway, those were my demos, and yay, they all worked, which is really, really cool. However, we've actually missed something really important so far, and this one, as a dev, not only scares me, but is probably the most shocking. Because the thing we've actually missed in like our entire holistic stack view is the development environment, which scarily enough is something we're actually seeing a lot of vulnerabilities start to appear in more now. In particular, VS Code. And like there is a lot of many millions of users using things like VS Code or even Brew in their day-to-day development of applications. As a dev, my initial reaction was, no, leave my development environment alone. That's my special place. But yeah, this is actually like scared me so much. And in particular, there's 4 extensions in the VS Code ecosystem that we're been identifying vulnerabilities in, which, and when I think about it from a development point of view, kind of makes sense because like they're built using the open source components that we've just been looking at. So the 4 it's safe to Google. There's a extension called Rainbow Fart. We get funny saying that one. It actually has some decent uses. Like was having a look. These actually demoing when I was getting ready to do some demos with these, and we've got an upcoming YouTube stream that me and my colleague Vandana are getting ready to do. But these scared me so much that I was there ready to install these in my local development environment and thought, no, I may not want to do this. So I've got it running inside VS Code, inside OS X on a VM. So I don't do it. The reason why it scared me so much, and spoilers for if you wanted to tune into the live demos, is you can actually access the OS X password file from one of these vulnerabilities. Which one? We'll leave that one for the live stream. But it isn't just VS Code that we're starting to see these vulnerabilities appear in too, but also the likes of Homebrew, which is like the fundamental staple of the Mac-based developer these days. Speaking from experience. Anyway, I just wanted to share this one because I literally am still weirded out by it from a development point of view because that is totally my special ground that I build things in. Anyway, if you want to find out more about that one, like I've got a really good blog post on that, and also we have there's a GitHub repo you can have a look at as well that kind of talks through it. There's actually a few new ones I think about that as well, which is so scary still. Anyway, I wake up with cold sweats over this one. Just in closing, I mean, scanning. You all know this, and you all condone it anyway. This is just something that we like. We're re-emphasizing with developers to help them adopt that whole security mindset because, well, we need to be, especially in development environments. Like, please make sure they know what they're installing in their development environment because, I mean, well, they're going to compromise their development environment and everything from the stack down. Like, we need to avoid that. Anyway, totally going to help them shift left and embrace that whole mindset. We've got a conference coming up. It's free. It's region friendly, so no 2 a.m. wake ups. But yeah, SneakCon 2021 is coming. October 5 to 7, depending what region you want to tune in from. Find out more, grab a ticket. There's a link on the screen. Also, I just wanted to mention amazing community DevSecOn has the DevSecOn Leadership Awards open at the moment. So if you know somebody, if you know a community doing some amazing work in the DevSec space, and you wanted to nominate them, It's free to nominate them, and they help get them recognized globally. So yeah, drop some names into that because they're open right now. And just finally, please use your tech superpowers for good. I know you all do anyway. I just love this GIF, and just mentioning at the end, and be excellent to each other. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you. That was a really cool talk. I'm just checking YouTube to see if there's any comments. And I don't think there are. So I think we're good to end the stream there. And if people want to sort of come and have a bit more of a general discussion, we'll be in the chapter Discord channel. So thanks for joining, guys, and we'll see you later.